we are to accept the government's definition, this would mean there would be at least 72 genders, which could include, but are not limited to, agender, ambigender, adamasgender, aerogender, anisogender, affectogender, agender flux, alexigender, aliasgender, amergender, ambigender, ambonec, amnicagender, amoragender, endocrine, endocrine flux, anisogender, angel gender, anogender, anongender, antisgender, annexgender, apangender, apconscrugender, apertusgender, apusgender, aquagender, aquariusgender, archigender, argogender, aristogender, arithgender, artistigender, astroflux, astrogender, atmosgender, arturgender, atugigender, autogender, axigender, axiogender.
The word is, sorry.
Help us gender.
Sorry. I thought he was raising a point of order.
Oh, sorry, okay. Bafflegender, bakergender, biogender, blissgender, blurgender, boggender, bordagender, boyflux, brevigender, burstgender, cadisgender, kalegender, cansegender, canisgender, cantogender, caprigender, cartogender, casflux, cavusgender, cisgender, celisgender, gender, centrigender, servogender, chaosgender, circgender, circumgender, clarigender, cloudgender, clowngender, codegender, cognitogender, coalgender, colgender, comgender, compgender, composegender, congrugender, constelgender, contigender, contingender, corugender, cosmic gender, cosmigender, comulogender, cyangender, silogender, and I must please forgive me if I do pronounce some of these wrong. They're quite extensive, and if I do offend anybody in reading this out and making mistakes, I apologise.
If I may just give could I just stop you just for 1 second,
yes.
just to give you a breather?
Thank you.
Could I just welcome our former colleague and friend, Seanad Neil Brunacon, to the public gallery. Neil, it's good to see you. Very welcome to Leinster House. Thank you for being here. Sorry, Senator Keogan.
Thank you very much. Compgender, compgender, compostgender, congrugender, constelgender, contigender, contingender, corigender, cosmigender, cosmic gender, cyangender, cyclogender, dalgender, dampgender, daysgender, deltagender, demigender, demifluid, demi-boy, demi-girl, demi-bi, demiflux, demosgender, denantine gender, dentrogender, depressed gender, deserved gender, design gender, devised gender, divine gender, demi-on gender, dream gender, deluxe gender, dust gender, disophoric gender, endophogender, ego gender, e-gender, eclipse gender, ephorgender, elgrin gender, L-gender, emmet gender, elex gender, effus gender, embergender, N-gender, N-genipe gender, N-lobe gender, E-gender, enthused gender, endromogender, eno-gender, epic gender, epigender, equil gender, evapor gender, evoke gender, ex-gender, expand gender, expect gender, exter gender, extract gender, fabric gender, fact gender, faddy gender, fey gender, fawn gender, fawn agender, phasogender, fellis gender, femigender, femifluid, femgender, fluis gender, flu gender, fic gender, fire gender, flam gender, flash gender, fluor gender, flexi gender, flicker gender, fling gender, flow gender, fluid trogender, fluid jetrosexual, fluid ender, flux fluid, flux gender, fluxion gender, foam gender, flow gender, font gender, foreigner, forno gender, fraggin gender, flan gender, fran gender, frick gender, frigid gender, frond gender, frost gender, fruity gender, fugu gender, glacky gender, gale gender, gallon gender, gallop gender, gender flux, gender fluid, gender light, gender satyr, gender sea, gender wood, gender, genic gender, geogender, low gender, gerund gender, giggle gender, glacy gender, glisten gender, glick gender, gloom gender, glossogender, glow gender, glue gender, gringe gender, grit gender, guaran gender, guas gender, gull gender, gunny gender, gus gender, gene fluid, gyno gender, gyn s gender, haggy gender, Hayden gender, hallow gender. Sorry. Hallow gender. Hapslow gender, Hassan gender, Havo gender, heel gender, heart gender, head gender, heli gender, hemi gender, hexagender, hydrogender, hyma gender, hippo gender, hora gender, hollow gender, hora gender, horse gender, host gender, whom gender, hurricane gender, hydrogender, hydranger, hype gender, hyperger, hypergender, icon gender, imber gender, emo gender, impulsi gender, inner gender, inda gender, indio gender, infinity gender, insig gender, intelligender, intergender, interflux, Isaac gender, iris gender, isogender, intergender, intino gender, itzy gender, janyo gender, jenga gender, juscus gender, Jordan gender, junk gender, Jupiter gender, just gender, kaleido gender, kaleidoflux, calogender, Kepler gender, kerfuffle flux, Kenik gender, kiss gender, chlor gender, corogender, crypto gender, corogender, Latonic gender, lagan gender, lamin gender, lampad gender, lampos gender, latic, Latin gender, lavender gender, lentis gender, leo gender, lepin gender, listen gender, living gender, locus gender, logic gender, log gender, loop gender, lotic gender, lounge gender, luggin gender, lumming gender, luna lo gender, lunar gender, lurgig ender, luster gender, lux gender, magro gender, magno gender, magpie gender, magno gender, majest gender, mago gender, malu gender, maple gender, marin gender, marin gun gender, marvel o gender, mass gender, mason gender, matik gender, maxi gender, meand gender, me chan gender, medi engender, medley gender, melaco gender, meli gender, melody gender, mimi gender, ment te gender, Merkel gender, mesogender, metamorph o gender, microgender, misdias gender, maya gender, mayage gender, my o mimo gender, molt gender,
On a point of order, please.
The Senator trying to make the point that the number of genders is infinite, in which case we may be here for a very long time.
Thank you.
Well, I think there's
Really
just
a point
about...
of order,
well,
but
I think it's
relevant
important.
question at the same time, but not a point of order, but thank you for raising the matter.
I think it's important that we know then what the words gender mean. Does it mean these particular genders? And I think this is important to read them into the record of the House.
It's not a very good use of time.
It may not be, but this is a really
in the context of it. I know it is. I know it is.
Senator,
but in the context of a guillotine.
Thank you. Could we address our remarks to the Chair, and could we keep our remarks to the relevance of the bill and to the amendment and to the issues being raised? And I would remind members that in the context of the amendment we're on, the relevance of the amendment is about the definition and
gender. Yeah.
Let's stick to that, please.
Point of order.
Point of order, Senator Keogan.
I just want to say, and again, with respect, Senator, it's not a comprehensive list, because all of humanity is infinite and varietal, and all difference is to be celebrated. And
not
I think
really a point of order, but
so it's a finite list, so it can't purport to represent the infinite variety of all human beings, which I say should be celebrated.
Thank you.
Microgender, metasgender, migender, migrogender, memogender, moltgender, momentigender, monigender, mooncangender, morphogender, mossgender, montigender, mountaingender, mauve-ender, multigender, mundangender, monkgender, murangender, musisgender, mutegender, gender, napgender, narrow-theogender, nebulangender, nefastgender, neogender, negligender, nimmergender, neptunegender, nervigender, netrogender, nextgender, nicogender, nightgender, nebusgender, nocgender, nobigender, non-binary, non-gender, non-gi-gender, novasgender, nullgender, numerigender, noxgender, nitrogender, osgender, oblique gender, obnuvigender, occlugender, ordogender, offgender, omegagender, omnigender, omnisgender, omnivergender, omnimovegender, ornigender, orthogender, obgender, opaque-gender, oplasgender, opengender, opigender, opulancegender, opusgender, obisgender, orchigender, orchigender, orogender, or origangender, oscillate gender, omasgender, overcastgender, ovogender, oxgender, oxtogender, osgender, passygender, padingender, palogender, pamiflux, pamlogender, panarchic gender, pandergender, pandgender, panxgender, paragender, palogender, parasolagender, parchgender, partic gender, pasgender, partagender, pegasgender, pel-e-gen gender, perennial gender, perigender, permi-monogender, permagender, perigender, persecutogender, persophonogender, petrogender, phantom gender, phlegm gender, photogender, phototropogender, furrogender, pianogender, picgender, piatogender, pigeon gender, pink gender, piogender, pixie gender, plasma gender, platogender, platogender, pleasegender, pliogender, plutogender, poetry gender, polar gender, polaris gender, polysflux gender, positivo gender, posgender, pote gender, prairie gender, percharic gender, percipi gender, permi gender, prima gender, priva gender, probabil gender, prod-e gender, prodmo gender, profect gender, progene gender, proliflux, propagender, prospic gender, protogender, purge-ogender, pyrogender, quasi-gender, quasi-gender, quest-gender, quiet gender, quintigender, quinx-gender, ray-gender, radiant gender, rainflux, rainogender, rapporteur gender, raven gender, ray gender, rayon gender, ready gender, realm gender, recurry gender, reflexogender, regender, regic gender, re-engender, relic gender, religender, reignite gender, repentagender, respigender, restitute gender, retrogender, revigender, riva gender, rex gender, rithema gender, rima gender, riptide gender, rishi gender, Revan gender, river gender, Rowan gender, robot gender, Roku gender, Rocky gender, Ro gender, romantic gender, Rosa gender, rose gender, rotund gender, ruby gender, ruinger gender, rust gender, rush gender, sable gender, sacral gender, safe gender, Sagitt gender, Sagittarius gender, Savo gender, Samo gender, Saddlewood gender, Sand gender, Sanda gender, Santi gender, Sap flux, Sap gender, Saf gender, Salcher gender, Central gender, Center gender, Suck gender, Sea gender, Sealude gender, Sedata gender, Self-figurenda, Sensor gender, Sensio gender, Sepia gender, Sequio gender, Serano gender, Sap gender, Shar gender, Shatter gender, Shift gender, Shift fluid, Shift gender, Shimmer gender, Ship gender, Shoal o gender, Shoe gender, Shy gender, Siam gender, Sibi gender, Sick gender, Psi gender, Sigma gender, Silan gender, Silo co-gender, silk gender, simula gender, singo gender, singularity gender, sinister gender, siren gender, six gender, skate gender, skelic gender, sky gender, sky lar gender, sleep gender, slide gender, slog gender, slush gender, smar o gender, smile gender, smogender, smoke gender, snow gender, soft gender, solar gender, solemn gender, solid gender, silo gender, slovo gender, solun gender, somni gender, soan gender, sonic gender, soan gender, soup gender, sound gender, speed gender, spic gender, spillinger, spirit gender, splash gender, splendor gender, spook gender, spray gender, spring gender, sprite gender, spritz gender, spur gender, squall gender, squawk gender, squeal gender, straddle gender, stage gender, stalic gender, stalagmite gender, starlight gender, star gender, static gender, stellar agender, stellar gender, stern gender, still gender, storm gender, stovo gender, stratagender, stream gender, street gender, strict gender, strobio gender, strut gender, slub flu, subgender, subdue gender, subri gender, subterran gender, successor gender, subgender, sunrise gender, sunset gender, super gender, superflux, supreme gender, supergender, surf gender, surprise gender, suren gender, swarm gender, swelter gender, switch gender, sword gender, sky by gender, synergy gender, Seanad gender, siren gender, cysto gender, taboo gender, tadpole gender, tailor gender, talum gender, tar gender, tassel gender, tech fluid, tech gender, tempest gender, temple flux, temporal gender, tenebro gender, tension gender, tent gender, ter gender, terran gender, tesser gender, tessie gender, texture gender, taslo gender, thaw gender, thermoflux, thermogender, thistle gender, thorough gender, thought gender, thread gender, thrilly gender, thrump gender, thunder gender, tidal gender, tide gender, tio gender, tie gender, tiger gender, tilt gender, time gender, turno dog gender, touch gender, tower gender, trace gender, traffic gender, transgender queer, transient gender, transit triangle gender, tricus gender, trident gender, triform gender, trilix gender, throt gender, troubadour gender, tro gender, trumpet gender, trucks gender, tsunami gender, turbo gender, turntable gender, tute gender, twig gender, twirl gender, Twitter gender, twilight gender, twinkle gender, twinkle len gender, type gender, typo gender, tri-ro gender, ultra gender, umbra gender, umbrella gender, you me be big gender, you arrow gender, you binary, you blurred gender, you clo gender, underflux, under gender, underflow gender, uniform gender, union o gender, unique fluid, unique no gender, no gender, gender, unsung gender, gender, updrafted gender, uplift gender, upper O gender, urano gender, Eurogo gender, urano gender, Euro gender, Uras gender, usher gender, utapan gender, utensi gender, utopian gender, vacat gender, vegander, vagabond gender, vague gender, valency gender, valley gender, valen gender, van gender, vary gender, v gender, velocity gender, veil gender, velum gender, velvet gender, venander gender, dio gender, Venus gender, verb flu, verb gender, versato gender, vesp gender, vibrata gender, victor gender, vertigender, vertender gender, villain gender, vine gender, viola flux, viola gender, virtue gender, vision gender, vita gender, vital gender, void gender, volta gender, volt gender, voyage gender, vocal gender, whale gender, warringer, war gender, wedge gender, welcome gender, whisper gender, whist gender, white gender, willow gender, wind gender, window gender, windy flux, winter gender, wobble gender, wooden gender, work gender, woven gender, rat gender, reno gender, ringer gender, exang gender, XME gender, XO gender, exograph gender, extra gender, exilo gender, exilo ender, yarno gender, yono gender, yearn ing gender, yellow gender, yield ender, yo e ender, young gender, youth gender, yitter, big, ender, xypho, gender, zero, gender, zigzag, ender, zo, d, ender, zo, gender, so, engender, zoom, gender, XY, gender, and asylo, gender. It's worth noting that if you were to accept our amendments today, you might avoid the possibility of a constitutional referendum later down the road.